I was in the middle of Zling, my father-in-law this month's $1,000 retirement stipend, when a message from my wife popped up. Chloe, tell your dad not to come. There's no room for him here. Me, already on my way to pick him up from the train station. She replied instantly. Chloe, fine. Then he can stay in a hotel, and you can pay for it. Or he can stay here. It'll be $200 a day. I stared at the transfer successful confirmation on my phone screen. The light in the room seemed to warp and distort. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, frozen. An hour later, I lowered the credit limit on her supplementary card to $1. Then I sent her a message. Starting today, your food, clothes, and expenses are your own responsibility. 01. My phone buzzed almost immediately. The name Chloe flashed on the screen, pulsing like a furious ghost. I swiped to answer, but said nothing. Ethan, are you insane? You canceled my card. Do you have a death wish? Her voice was sharp enough to pierce an eardrum, laced with the unquestionable authority she always assumed. I held the phone away from my ear, my own voice as calm as if I were discussing the weather. Your expenses are your own from now on. There was a second of dead silence, followed by an even more hysterical explosion. My own? With what? Ethan Miller, I'm telling you, right now, you restore my card. Or do you want to see your father sleeping on the street tonight? She practically screamed that last sentence. Listening to her, I felt a cold hand clench around my heart, squeezing until all the blood was gone, leaving nothing but a numb, icy void. I didn't give her another word. I just hung up. I was afraid if I heard anything else, the composure I had maintained for 5 years would instantly shatter. I opened our family group chat, the one I'd created so we could all easily communicate with both sets of parents, but which had devolved into a stage for Chloe and her mother's daily bragging and endless requests. I took a screenshot showing the supplementary card's new $1 limit and posted it. I didn't add a single word. Then I tag everyone. The silent declaration was more powerful than any screaming match. After that, I put my phone on silent, tossed it onto the passenger seat, and started the car. Time to go get my dad. The old man, whose own daughter-in-law had just put a price tag on his head. $200 a day. Traffic crawled through the city's arteries. Outside, the neon lights of Seattle glowed, each one like a cold, indifferent eye. To the outside world, I was a success story, a tech manager with a salary of $250,000 a year, a nice condo, and a new car. But only I knew the truth. I was a precision-engineered ATM, a tool used to funnel cash to my wife, Chloe, and her entire family. We'd been married for 5 years. She quit her job right after the wedding, settling comfortably into the role of a stay-at-home wife. I gave her a supplementary credit card with no limit. Every month, without fail, I sent her father, Richard Thompson, $1,000 for his living expenses. I covered her mother's biannual overseas vacations and sponsored her brother's new car without a second thought. I thought my sacrifices would buy me a harmonious family, that it would earn my own family a little respect. It wasn't until today that I realized how catastrophically wrong I'd been. It's never the last straw that breaks the camel's back. It's the weight of all the ones that came before it. My father's visit just forced me to finally see the rotten core of my marriage. When I pulled up to the Amtrak station, I spotted his small frame in the crowd immediately. My dad, David Miller, a retired teacher who'd spent his entire life in a small town in eastern Washington. He carried a faded old duffel bag and a large, bulging tote bag filled with vegetables from his garden and fresh eggs he'd saved for me. He saw me, and a smile broke across his weathered face, a mixture of joy and apprehension. Ethan, I hurried over and took the bags from him. They were heavy. Dad, you didn't have to bring all this. It's nothing. He waved his hand, following a step behind me like a kid afraid of doing something wrong. Grew it all myself. Didn't cost a thing. For you and Chloe to have something fresh. Once he was in the car, he looked around at the clean interior, clutching his duffel bag in his lap, as if afraid he'd get something dirty. As I drove, he hesitated for a long moment before finally speaking. Ethan, am I causing trouble for you too? Is she not happy that I'm here? A lump formed in my throat. I swallowed hard, looking at his graying hair and wrinkled face in the rearview mirror, and forced a smile. No, Dad, she's just busy with work, talking nonsense. We're thrilled you're here. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. My father just said, "Oh," and turned to look out the window at the passing city lights. I knew he understood everything. He just didn't want to make things harder for me. A simple, kind old man who had spent his life trying not to be a burden to anyone. And his daughter-in-law had just turned him into a transaction. When we got home, Chloe's designer heels were scattered across the entryway, a clear sign of her foul mood. The living room was a mess. She clearly wasn't home. Good. I got my father settled, showing him to the guest room I'd already prepared. "Dad, you'll be staying in here for a few days." I opened the closet to show him the new set of sheets and the plush comforter I'd bought yesterday. Seeing the brand new bedding, he immediately waved his hands, looking even more anxious. "Oh no, you don't need to use something this nice. The old ones are fine. I don't want to get it dirty." "Dad," I said, walking over and putting my hands on his shoulders, gently pushing him to sit on the edge of the bed. "This is your son's home. You can live however you want. There are no rules here." A shimmer of moisture appeared in my father's tired eyes. He patted the back of my hand and said nothing more. I got him a glass of water and watched as he drank it, the exhaustion from his trip seeming to finally ease a little. At 11 o'clock, the front door clicked open. Chloe was home, and she smelled of wine. Her eyes immediately fell on my dad's old jacket draped over the sofa and the offending tote bag of vegetables in the corner. Her face went rigid. Without a word, she slammed her expensive handbag onto the couch, her heels clacking loudly as she stalked past my father's room. She finished her dramatic entrance by slamming the master bedroom door shut with a deafening bang. The sound echoed in the silent condo. The light under my father's door instantly went out. He'd heard it. The fire I had been suppressing in my chest roared to life. I pushed open the bedroom door. She had her back to me, taking off her makeup. The mirror reflected her face, etched with impatience and resentment. "You want me to be nice to your father?" she said to my reflection, her voice cold. "Then restore my card. Otherwise, I have 100 ways to make sure he doesn't last a single night here." I didn't speak. I just stood behind her, watching the woman I had loved and spoiled for 5 years, and how she had become this unrecognizable monster. I took out my phone. Right in front of her, I opened my banking app. I found a recurring monthly transfer of $1,000 to Richard Thompson. I hit cancel. Then I turned the screen toward her, so she could clearly see the transfer cancel notification. "As you wish." I turned, walked out, and gently closed the door behind me, leaving her in the dead, suffocating silence. 02. The next morning, the war began in silence. My dad was an early riser, a habit from years of rural life. Just as the sun was coming up, I heard him moving around in the kitchen. By the time I was out of the shower, the dining table was set with steaming oatmeal, a few of his homegrown vegetable sides, and perfectly fried golden yellow eggs. The comforting smell of a home-cooked breakfast felt completely alien in this house. Chloe emerged from the bedroom right on time, her makeup perfectly applied as if she were heading to a gala. She didn't even glance at the table. She walked straight to the fridge, pulled out a carton of expensive organic milk, and twisted the cap. In front of my father, she took a single sip, then walked to the sink and poured the rest of the carton down the drain. "It's been open for 2 days. Probably not fresh anymore," she said casually. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was like a dull knife dragging across my father's heart. I saw the smile freeze on my dad's face. He nervously wiped his hands on his apron. Chloe, the oatmeal's ready. Have something warm to eat," he offered, his smile strained. Chloe acted as if she hadn't heard him. She pulled a new carton of milk from the cabinet and began drinking it slowly. My chest felt tight. I walked over, took the bowl of oatmeal he had been saving for himself, and put it in front of him. "Dad," I said softly, "try what I made. See if I'm out of practice." Then I took the bowl he had served for me, sat down, and ate every last bite, cleaning the plate of vegetables as well. I wanted my actions to tell him that his kindness was received and deeply appreciated. Chloe's expression soured. She slammed the milk carton on the table and stormed into the living room. Soon, the deafening noise of a reality TV show filled the condo, the kind with screeching contestants and an over-the-top canned laugh track. After breakfast, my dad wanted to sit in the living room and watch the news. He perched uncomfortably on the very edge of the sofa, his body tense, overwhelmed by the noise. Chloe shot him a look, and instead of turning the volume down, she grabbed the remote and turned it up. The The sound was a physical assault, making my temples throb. The anger in me was boiling over. I walked over, and without a word, I unplugged the TV from a wall. The world went blessedly silent. Chloe shot up from the couch like a scalded cat. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I tossed the power cord onto the media console and looked at her, my eyes like ice. "Looks like the TV's broken. Bad connection. I'll call someone to fix it later." Then I went to my study, got my iPad, and handed it to my father. "Dad, use this. It's got news, shows, everything you want." Chloe was trembling with rage, pointing a finger at me. "Ethan, you're doing this on purpose." I met her gaze, a sarcastic smile playing on my lips. "Didn't you say it was $200 a night?" I said slowly. "By hotel standards, that should include utilities and entertainment, right? This level of service really isn't worth $200 a day. Should I leave you a bad review?" "You." She was so choked with anger she couldn't speak, her chest heaving. Just then my phone rang. It was my father-in-law, Richard. I put on speaker and set on the coffee table. Chloe's eyes lit up as if her savior had arrived, and she glared at me. "Ethan," Richard's voice came through, tinged with impatience and accusation. "How come this month's money hasn't come through yet? It's already the 3rd. I leaned back on the sofa. "Sorry, Richard," I said casually. "Things are a little tight right now. Cash flow issues." "Cash flow issues." His voice jumped an octave. "You make $250,000 a year, and you're telling me you have cash flow issues? Ethan, do you have a problem with our Chloe?" "Not at all." I chuckled, glancing at Chloe, whose face had gone pale. "The main thing is my dad came to stay with us for a while." "Your dad's there? That's great. A family reunion. What does that have to do with money?" "It does," I explained calmly. "Chloe said that if my dad stays at our place, we have to charge him $200 a day for lodging. As you know, I'm just a salaried employee. That's a pretty significant expense. I have to make sure that's covered before I can figure out other bills." My voice was quiet, but on speakerphone, every word was crystal clear to Richard on the other end, and to Chloe sitting right here. The color drained from her face completely. There was a long, dead silence on the phone. Then, my father-in-law's enraged roar. "This is ridiculous." Click. He slammed the phone down. In the living room, only the sound of Chloe's ragged breathing remained. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw panic and fear in her eyes. 03. I thought that phone call from her father would make Chloe back down, but I had severely underestimated the shamelessness of her family. That evening, I was watching a history documentary with my dad when Chloe came home from wherever she'd been. She didn't slam doors this time. Instead, she walked straight up to me and slapped a piece of A4 paper on the coffee table. It was printed up formally. The title read, "Lodging Invoice." It clearly listed, room rate, $200. 00/day, check-in date. 3 days total, $600. 00 note. The total for this week, 7 days, is $400. Please settle the bill before checkout. My dad, sitting beside me, saw it. His face flushed a deep red, and he looked so uncomfortable he started to stand up, as if to go pack his things. I put a hand on his arm, motioning for him to stay seated. "Dad, don't worry about it. Just watch your show." I picked up the flimsy piece of paper, read the cold, hard text, and suddenly I laughed. It was the kind of laugh that comes from pure, unadulterated rage. I nodded, looking at Chloe's chin, tilted slightly upward in triumph. "You're right. We should keep the accounts clear." With that, I stood up and went in my home office. Chloe thought I was surrendering. A victorious smirk appeared on her face. I opened the safe in my office and pulled out a thick binder from the very back. I'd been preparing it for a long time, ever since I realized my marriage was being bled dry by her and her family. I'm not a petty man, but I'm not a fool without limits, either. I walked back into the living room and spread the entire binder open on the coffee table in front of her. "You have her lodging invoice. This is your family's expense report." Chloe's smile froze. I flipped to the first page and pointed to the records, reading each word aloud. Item 1. Mr. Richard Thompson, your father. Retirement stipend, $1,000 per month, starting from the second year of our marriage, for a total of 36 months. Grand total, $36,000. I turned to the second page. Item 2. Mrs. Susan Thompson, your mother. Travel fund and wellness expenses, 2 international trips per year, budget of $3,000 per trip, for a total of $18,000 over 3 years. Various supplements and health products, averaging $200 a month, for a total of $7,200. Item total, $25,200. Chloe's breathing became ragged. I didn't stop. I turned to the third page. Item 3. Kevin Thompson, your brother. Tuition support and car down payment. 2 years ago, he requested $5,000 for a grad school prep course. 1 year ago, claiming his girlfriend's family required it, I helped with the down payment on a $30,000 sedan. My contribution, $20,000. Item total, $25,000. I looked up at her. Her face had gone from red to a ghostly white. I kept turning pages. Item 4 begins your personal expenses. This is your credit card statement. I've only highlighted single purchases over $1,000. A new handbag from brand X, $3,000. A limited edition coat from brand Y, $4,000. A premium VIP annual membership at Z Spa, $6,000. Over the last 3 years, luxury goods, clothes, and beauty treatments alone total $68,000. I slapped the final summary page down in front of her. The bold, black number on the paper seemed to burn her eyes. All items combined, the grand total is $154,200. I leaned in closer, my voice low but carrying the weight of an anvil. Chloe, out of that $154,000, even if we subtract a generous amount for your reasonable living expenses as my wife, you and your family have single-handedly taken at least $100,000 from me. This condo is 1,500 square feet. If I were to charge your family of 3 a modest management fee of $1,000 a month for their constant spiritual investment in our lives, do you think that would be too much? I whispered that last part right next to her ear. Chloe shuddered, as if all her strength had been drained away. She collapsed onto the sofa, utterly speechless. She stared at the thick stack of papers, the documented proof of her family's greed. Her eyes filled with despair and terror. She had started this war over money, confident she would win. She never imagined that I was already armed with a nuke. 04. After a moment of dead silence, Chloe completely broke down. She lunged forward like a madwoman, tearing at the printed pages, a shrill scream erupting from her throat. Ethan, you set me up. You've been planning to divorce me all along, haven't you? Shredded paper fluttered through the air like confetti at a funeral. I watched her tantrum, my heart a frozen lake. You're the one who wanted to settle the accounts. My calmness only enraged her further. She snatched her phone and dialed her mother, instantly switching to a tearful, desperate victim. Her voice was so full of anguish, she sounded like she'd been abandoned by the entire world. Mom, you have to come. Ethan wants to divorce me. He's been keeping a record of every single penny our family has spent. He's trying to kill us. Half an hour later, a thunderous pounding echoed from our front door. My in-laws, Richard and Susan Thompson, had arrived. Susan stormed in without even taking off her shoes and pointed a finger right at my nose. Ethan, you ungrateful bastard. You snake. Our Chloe marrying you is the best thing that ever happened to you. And you dare to keep a ledger? What kind of a man are you? Richard, his face dark, stood with his hands behind his back, lecturing me like a bureaucrat. Ethan, this is not how you handle things. A man earns money for his wife to spend. Who else would she spend it on? We're family. Why do you need to be so calculating? Are you hiding money from Chloe because you're planning on doing something shameful behind her back? They tag-teamed me, every word a poison dart, trying to paint me as the villain. My dad came out of his room, his face etched with worry, trying to speak up for me. Richard, Susan, let's all talk this out calmly. Ethan's not like that. I put an arm out, shielding my dad behind me. I stood up and surveyed the 3 greedy, selfish, ugly faces before me. Are you done? My voice was quiet, but it silenced the room instantly. Now it's my turn. I looked directly at Chloe, my gaze firm and resolute. First, if you don't want to be married anymore, fine. We can get a divorce. This condo is my prenuptial property, notarized. Our joint savings can be split. However, I held up the binder. This $100,000 of marital assets, which you gifted to your family without my consent, constitutes malicious transfer of assets. I will have my lawyer calculate the exact amount, and I will sue to get it back. Chloe's pupils contracted. I then turned to Richard and Susan. Second, if you want this marriage to continue, then starting today, Chloe gets a $200 weekly allowance. Household expenses will be reimbursed with receipts, which I will manage. All non-essential financial support to my in-laws and brother-in-law is canceled, effective immediately. Susan shrieked. 200 a week? Are you kidding me? My daughter. I ignored her completely. I walked over to the corner where my dad's tote bag still sat. I bent down and pulled out a heavy bag of organic brown rice, then grabbed a new jug of olive oil from the kitchen. I walked right up to Richard, who was purple with rage. As for your retirement stipend, I shoved the 10-pound bag of rice and the large jug of oil into his arms. Mr. Thompson, here is this month's support. As your son-in-law, I promise you will not starve. From now on this day, every month, I will personally deliver rice, flour, and oil to your home. This is the $200 a day respect your daughter demanded. Now, I'm giving it back to you. Caught off guard, Richard staggered under the weight. He clutched the rice and oil as if holding a monument to his own shame. His knuckles were white from the strain, his entire body trembling. His lips moved, but no words, no curses came out. The living room fell into a dead, ringing silence. Chloe and her mother stared, frozen, as if they'd been turned to stone. In that moment, I felt an incredible sense of release, beating them with their own logic. That was the most exquisite humiliation of all. 05. Chloe's family finally left, clutching the bag of rice and jug of oil, their faces a mask of resentment and defeat. I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, that night, my phone was bombarded with messages from relatives and mutual friends. Ethan, how could you do that to Chloe? Couples fight, but cutting off her dad's retirement money is too much. A man needs to be the bigger person. You don't keep tabs on your own wife. Chloe had launched a full-scale drama on her Facebook page. She posted a selfie with her eyes red and swollen, the lighting dim and tragic. The caption read, "You can't warm a heart that's made of stone. 5 years of my life, all for nothing." Below it, a long line of comments from her mother, her brother, and all her aunts and uncles appeared. My poor girl, married to a monster. Chloe, don't be afraid, we all support you. A man like that should be left with nothing. She's just too kind. That's why people take advantage of her. I heard he's not just hiding assets, he's cheating too. The rumors spread like a virus. Overnight, I was transformed into a deadbeat, abusive, cheating, financially corrupt monster. I read the cascade of lies and felt nothing but a detached sense of absurdity. I didn't engage in a public fight on Facebook. That was beneath me. Instead, I quietly scanned my meticulously organized family expense report into a single PDF file. Then I emailed it to a few of the older, more respected, and influential members of our extended family. I trusted that the facts would speak for themselves. The next day, they took the battle offline. My mother-in-law, Susan, showed up in my office building. She timed it for the lunch rush, when foot traffic was at its peak. She sat down on the front steps of the corporate campus, slapped her thighs, and started wailing. Is there no justice in this world? Everyone come and see. My son-in-law is an executive at this company, makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now he won't even pay for his mother-in-law's medical bills. He's trying to starve us out. He's a heartless wolf in sheep's clothing. Her performance was spectacular, and she quickly drew a crowd of my colleagues. People started pointing, whispering. I was walking out with my team to get lunch and ran straight into the spectacle. The looks on my colleagues' faces became instantly complicated. I walked through the crowd, my face a blank mask, and stood before Susan. Seeing me, she cried even harder, reaching out to grab my pant leg. Ethan, you heartless creature, you finally show your face. Give me the money, or I'll die right here at your company's door. I took a step back, avoiding her grasp. I turned to the helpless security guard. I don't know this woman. She is severely disrupting our company's business and damaging our image. Please handle this. Susan's wailing stopped abruptly. She stared at me, dumbfounded, a look of pure disbelief on her face. She clearly never expected me to disown her in front of so many people. I took out my phone, started recording, and pointed it at her. Ma'am, I'm warning you one more time. Your current actions constitute slander and public disturbance. If you continue this behavior, I will call the police. My voice was low, but it was cold and devoid of emotion. Everyone around us heard it clearly. Susan was stunned into silence by my stone-cold demeanor. For a moment, she forgot how to cry. Just then, a steady voice spoke up behind me. "Ethan, what's going on here?" It was Mr. Davis, the vice president who managed our legal department. He was known for being a no-nonsense, iron-fisted executive who despised this kind of public drama. He frowned at Susan sitting on the ground, then looked at me, and immediately understood the situation. He spoke to the security guard in a low, firm voice. "This is completely unacceptable. Record video, take photos for evidence, and call the police. Report her for creating a public disturbance. Our legal department will follow up." Hearing the words police and legal department, Susan's face went white as a sheet. She was here to cause a scene and pressure me, not to actually get arrested. She scrambled up from the ground, forgetting her tears, and mumbled, I must be in the wrong place," before scurrying away under the contemptuous stares of the crowd. The drama was over. Mr. Davis clapped me on the shoulder. He didn't say anything, but his eyes held a look of approval. I knew that in this round, I had won again, with the calmest, most legally sound approach possible. 0-6. When soft tactics failed, Chloe turned to hardball. Realizing that tears and public opinion had no effect on me, she played what she thought was her trump card, the law. A few days later, I received a text from her. It was a photo of a letter from a law firm. Below the image was a defiant message. "Ethan, since you want to be so cruel, don't blame me for forgetting the past. I'll see you in court. I'm going to make you pay for what you've done. I'm taking half of everything and leaving you with nothing." She thought the letter would scare me, make me come crawling back. She thought I was still the same Ethan who would compromise anything for the sake of a peaceful home. I looked at the photo and replied with 4 words. "Okay, see you there." I put my phone down and immediately called a friend, a partner at one of the top family law firms in the city. I explained the entire situation, including the detailed expense report I had. My friend listened to it all and then laughed on the other end of the line. "Ethan, this isn't a divorce. This is the termination of a foreign aid program." He told me my condo, being a clearly documented prenuptial asset that my parents had also contributed to, was completely safe. Chloe couldn't touch it. As for our joint savings, legally, she was entitled to half. "However," he added, "that binder of yours is a nuke. Her sustained, unilateral, and large-scale gifting of marital assets to her family can absolutely be defined in court as malicious transfer of community property. We can argue that when the assets are divided, her share should be significantly reduced or even eliminated. And we need to strike first." He gave me one crucial piece of advice. Go to the courthouse immediately and file for a temporary restraining order to freeze all marital assets. Freeze every joint bank account, every investment. Attach your binder as preliminary evidence. Once that's granted, she won't be able to touch a single cent. It was a brilliant move. Chloe wanted to sue me, to hire expensive lawyers. All of that required money. My job was to cut off her supply line at the source. I acted immediately. The very next day, I went to the courthouse with all my documentation and filed the motion. Because my evidence was so thorough, the court approved it quickly. While Chloe was still dreaming of taking half my assets and walking away, every single bank card in her name became a useless piece of plastic overnight. When she went to the bank to withdraw money to pay the second installment of her expensive lawyer's retainer, the teller informed her that all of her accounts had been frozen by court order. Her phone was probably blowing up with angry calls from her lawyer. She called me, screaming, but her voice was no longer sharp with rage. It was trembling with panic. "Ethan, where did you hide all the money? You despicable coward." I listened to her powerless fury, my voice calm. "The money's not hidden. It's with the court. If you want it, you'll have to ask the judge." I hung up. I could perfectly imagine her face on the other end, twisted with a cocktail of rage and fear. "Chloe, the power you thought you had was nothing more than what I gave you. And now I was taking it back. With no money and no ammunition, what were you going to fight me with?" 0-7. Money was the lifeblood of Chloe's family. It was the only thing holding their transactional relationships together. The moment I severed that connection, their supposedly unbreakable family unit shattered. A vicious, ugly drama began to unfold, all captured by the home security camera I had installed with Chloe's prior knowledge and consent. My dad had already gone back to his quiet life in eastern Washington. I was alone in the condo. At night, I would sometimes open the security app on my phone and watch the chaos like it was a bleak reality show. With no money, Chloe had no choice but to move back in with her parents. On the first day, her father, Richard, put on a show of comforting her, promising to get justice for her. By the third day, when he realized no more money was coming from me and he'd run out of his expensive imported tea, his attitude soured. He started sighing dramatically whenever she was around. I told you to keep Ethan happy, but you just had to cause trouble. Now look what you've done. You have to flatter a man. Don't you understand anything? On the fifth day, her brother Kevin's car payment was overdue. The collection agency started calling his mother, Susan, a dozen times a day, screaming obscenities at her. Kevin, furious, demanded money from Chloe, who could only tell him she was broke. The two of them had a massive fight in the living room. You have the nerve to come back here, Kevin yelled, pointing at her. You can't even handle your own husband, and now I'm getting hounded by debt collectors because of you. If they repossess my car, I'm done with you. Susan fanned the flames from the sidelines, wailing, Chloe, why were you so stupid? Why did you have to fight with him? What would it have cost you to just apologize and smooth things over? Now we're going to be rationing rice. What have I done to deserve this suffering in my old age? Chloe, once the pride of the family, the hero who brought in a steady stream of cash, was now nothing more than a useless burden who had cut off their income and brought home a mountain of trouble. She was finally getting a taste of what it felt like to be abandoned by her own family. I watched the scene on my phone, Chloe being cornered by her family, curled up on the couch, sobbing, and I felt nothing, not even a shred of satisfaction. I didn't pity her misfortune or resent her weakness. I felt nothing at all. She had brought all of this on herself. During this time, I called my dad more often. Before he left, I'd taken him for a full checkup at the best hospital in the city. Thankfully, he was in good health. I also showed him the city where his son had built a life, buying him new clothes and shoes he never would have bought for himself. At the train station, he held my hand tightly, his calloused palm warm and strong. Son, I heard about what's going on at home. Don't let yourself be mistreated. I support you. I nodded, my eyes getting misty. I know, Dad. Don't worry. Your good days are just beginning. As I watched his train pull away, the last bit of hesitation in my heart vanished. I had to win this fight. For myself. And for the people I was truly meant to protect. 08. Shunned by her family and pressured by her lawyer for payment, Chloe finally hit a dead end. One Saturday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was her. She looked haggard and exhausted, her hair a mess and dark circles under her eyes. She was holding a bag of groceries, a pathetic attempt to look like a dutiful wife. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. The moment she saw me, tears streamed down her face. Without a word, she tried to drop to her knees and grab my legs. Ethan, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, just give me one more chance. I stepped aside just in time, my brow furrowed. Just say what you need to say. Don't do this. When kneeling failed, she stood in the doorway, crying hysterically, recounting the abuse she was suffering at home, how her parents and brother despised her now. I see them for who they are now. They never cared about me. They only cared about the money. Now that it's gone, they treat me like garbage. Ethan, I've cut them off. I'm never speaking to them again. From now on, I'll listen to you. I'll do whatever you say. Please, can we not get a divorce? Please. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. A month ago, it might have worked. But now, looking at her face streaked with crocodile tears, I just felt sick. Cut them off? A leopard doesn't change its spots. But I didn't call her out. An idea was forming in my mind. I helped her up, handed her a tissue, and softened my tone. Colleen, it's cold out there. Seeing my change in attitude, a flicker of hope appeared in her eyes. She quickly wiped her tears and followed me inside. As she was taking off her shoes, I quietly turned my back, discreetly started a voice memo on my phone, and placed it on the corner of the living room coffee table. A trap was about to be sprung. I cooked a simple dinner. The atmosphere at the table was thick with awkward silence. I was the one to break it. You know, I'm not really angry with you. I know you love your parents and want to take care of them. That's normal. I started, pretending to be magnanimous. Chloe clung to my words like a drowning woman to a life raft. Yes, yes, you're the best, Ethan. I knew you'd understand. I shifted gears. But some of the things you did were a little much. For example, that $20,000 for your brother's car. Why didn't you talk to me about it first? We're a team. We're supposed to make these decisions together, right? I asked, my tone wounded and confused. Eager to prove how much she had changed and to distance herself from her family, Chloe blurted it out without a second thought. It was my fault. All my fault. My dad told me that the girl Kevin was dating said her parents wouldn't let them get married unless he had a car. I was afraid you'd say no, that it was too much for a kid just out of college. So I just did it and figured I'd tell you later. Ethan, I promise, it will never happen again. Perfect. She had just admitted, on the record, that she gave him the money without my consent. I nodded and pressed on. And your mom's trips to Europe? Thousands of dollars each time. I know we're comfortable, but that's not pocket change. It was my ego. I was being stupid. Chloe immediately took the blame. My mom was always competing with her friends, bragging about which daughter was treating her to a trip abroad. I just got caught up in it, and I transferred the money from our joint account. I just wanted her to be able to show off. I'll never do it again. And so it went for the rest of the meal. With my careful prompting, Chloe, in her desperate attempt to show her remorse and her break from her family, admitted to orchestrating several major, secret transfers of our money over the years. Every word was captured by the phone on the coffee table. Chloe thought this was the beginning of her comeback. She had no idea it was the final nail in her coffin. 09. The court date arrived quickly. Before the official proceedings, the judge ordered a settlement conference. My lawyer and I sat on one side of the conference room. Chloe and her slick, middle-aged lawyer sat on the other. Her lawyer started things off, his tone arrogant and aggressive. Mr. Miller, my client's demands are simple. Taking into consideration your 5 years of marriage and my client's contributions as a homemaker, we are prepared to make a significant concession. He cleared his throat and held up 3 fingers. First, the condo. While it is your prenuptial property, the increase in its value over the past 5 years is considered a marital asset. My client demands 30% of that appreciated value. Second, all joint savings will be divided equally, according to the law. Third, as the party at fault, he said, emphasizing the words, you have caused my client immense emotional distress. We require an additional $200,000 in damages for pain and suffering. He paused, then added with a condescending smirk, if you agree to these terms, Mr. Miller, we can sign the papers today. Otherwise, we have plenty of time to drag this out in court. A year, maybe 2. For a project director at a major tech company like yourself, I imagine that kind of distraction could be quite problematic. It was a naked threat. Across the table, Chloe looked at me with a pitiful, doe-eyed expression, as if to say, see, I'm being reasonable. Just agree. It was a masterful performance. I looked at them both and let out a cold laugh. I turned to the mediator. Your Honor, I do not agree to mediation. Let's proceed to trial. The expressions on their faces shifted. They thought their threats of a long, drawn-out battle would scare me into settling. They thought I would pay them to go away. They had made a terrible miscalculation. In the courtroom, Chloe's lawyer repeated his strategy, painting her as a devoted housewife who had sacrificed everything for her marriage, only to be cruelly cast aside. He portrayed her as the ultimate victim. When it was our turn, my friend and lawyer stood up, calm and composed. Your Honor, the plaintiff objects to the defendant's characterization of events. During the course of the marriage, the defendant, Ms. Thompson, repeatedly and unilaterally gifted large sums of marital assets to her family members. Her actions constitute a severe and malicious transfer of community property. Her lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. That is a baseless and unsubstantiated accusation. My lawyer simply smiled at the judge. Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to submit a new piece of evidence. He handed a USB drive to the clerk. A moment later, Chloe's voice filled the silent courtroom. My dad told me that the girl Kevin was dating said her parents wouldn't let them get married unless he had a car. I was afraid you'd say no, so I just did it and figured I'd tell you later. My mom was always competing with her friends. I just got caught up in it. I transferred the money from our joint account. The recording played on. Her voice was so earnest, so desperate to confess and repent. And now, those same words were her own verdict. I looked over at Chloe. The blood drained from her face. It was a complete and total collapse from the inside out. Her eyes widened first in disbelief, then in pure, abject terror. She slumped in her chair, shaking uncontrollably, her mouth hanging open, unable to make a sound. She finally understood. She understood that my softness and forgiveness that day had been nothing but an elaborate trap. She thought she was the one putting on an act, but I had been the director of the entire production. Every eye in the courtroom was on her. Shame, fear, and regret wrapped around her like a suffocating net. The final, fatal blow had landed right on target. 10. The court's final judgment was no surprise. The judge delivered the verdict from a bench. First, my prenuptial property, the condo, and all its appreciated value were affirmed as my sole and separate property. Chloe's claim was denied. Second, regarding the joint savings, given that the defendant, Chloe Thompson, engaged in the malicious transfer of community property during the marriage, and that the amount was substantial and the behavior egregious, the court ruled that the plaintiff, Ethan Miller, would receive 80% of the joint assets. The defendant, Chloe Thompson, would receive 20%. Third, the defendant's claim for emotional distress damages was found to have no basis in fact or law and was dismissed. The moment the judge's gavel fell, a horrifying shriek escaped Chloe's lips. "No, that's not fair. I appeal." She tried to lunge toward the judge's bench like a madwoman, but was quickly restrained by two bailiffs. The 20% she was awarded wasn't even enough to cover her total legal fees. She had lost, utterly and completely. Walking out of the courthouse, the sunlight was so bright it stung my eyes. I took a deep breath of clean, fresh air and felt the crushing weight that had been on my chest for 5 years finally lift. I felt lighter than I had in a very long time. "Ethan!" Chloe came running after me, her hair a mess, her makeup streaked with tears. She looked like a wild, desperate woman. She reached for my arm, but I stepped away. She stumbled, catching her balance. Her red-rimmed eyes locked on me. "Ethan, do you really hate me this much?" she asked, her voice raw. "All our years together, did they mean nothing?" I looked at her, at the face I had once loved, the face I would have done anything for. "Meaning," I replied calmly. "The moment you told me my own father had to pay rent to stay in our home for a week, whatever we had was gone." "You don't hate me," I said, turning to leave. "You hate that the ATM," finally he said a password. I walked away and didn't look back, leaving her to the sound of her own hopeless, hysterical sobs in the sunlight. After the divorce, Chloe's life went from the penthouse to the gutter. With the few $1,000s she had left, she had nowhere to go but back to her parents' house. But a daughter who had lost her value, who was now embroiled in legal defeat and public shame, was nothing but an irritating burden to Richard and Susan. I heard snippets of news about them from distant relatives. Susan now looked at Chloe with nothing but contempt, constantly calling her a useless thing, a curse, and a woman who couldn't even keep a man. Richard, having been out of the workforce for so long, couldn't find a decent job. He supposedly got a gig doing manual labor on a construction site through a connection, but after one day, he was so exhausted he couldn't get out of bed and refused to go back. Without my sponsorship, Kevin's car was quickly repossessed. The girlfriend who demanded the car in the first place immediately broke up with him. He took all his anger out on Chloe, and the two of them fought constantly. Chloe, once the family's cash cow and source of pride, was now their biggest liability and the focal point of all their misery. One day, I was driving past their old, rundown apartment complex. I happened to glance over and saw a familiar, yet foreign silhouette. It was my ex-father-in-law, Richard. He was struggling to carry a large bag of rice up the stairs, the same brand I had shoved into his arms months ago. His back was stooped, his steps slow and labored. He had to stop and catch his breath on every landing. In that moment, I realized he finally looked like an old man. A regular old man, stripped of his benefactor, forced to toil for his own survival. I also heard that Chloe tried to find a job, but a stay-at-home wife with a 5-year gap in her resume, no marketable skills, and an inflated sense of self-worth found herself hitting a wall at every turn. She was too proud for low-paying jobs and unqualified for high-paying ones. She sent me a few texts. At first, they were pleas and apologies. "Ethan, I was really wrong. Please give me another chance." When I didn't reply, they turned to curses. "Ethan Miller, I hope you rot in hell. I'll never forgive you for what you did to me." I never responded. I just blocked her number and deleted her from my life. Their fate was miserable, but it was also inevitable, and it had nothing to do with me anymore. I sold the condo, with all its bad memories, shortly after. With the money, I bought a brand new, beautiful apartment in a smaller city, much closer to my parents. I moved my dad in with me. I gave him the sunniest, south-facing bedroom. I took an extended leave of absence from work. Mr. Davis, my VP, not only approved it, but also informed me that the board had officially promoted me. When I came back, I would be the new director of engineering. He said a man who could handle his personal affairs with such decisiveness and logic was someone they could trust with greater responsibility. I kept the promise I made to my father. I took him on the trip he had talked about his entire life, but never had the chance to take: New Zealand. We saw the brilliant blue oceans he'd always dreamed of, walked along the shores of Lake Wakatipu in Queenstown, and explored the fantasy world of Hobbiton. Under the brilliant southern hemisphere sun, my father's face broke into a joyful, childlike smile I had never seen before. I transferred a large sum of money into his bank account. "Dad," I told him, "this is your retirement fund. You can spend it however you want. You don't have to save every penny anymore." My father smiled, tears welling in his eyes. He kept repeating, "My son made it. My son really made it." Seeing his happiness, I felt a sense of peace and contentment I had never known. I knew that everything I had done was worth it. I was no longer anyone's ATM. I was no longer the good husband or good son-in-law who sacrificed his own dignity for a false sense of peace. I was my parents' son. I was just Ethan. The road ahead was long, but for the first time, I knew which direction I was heading. I was living for myself, and for the people who were truly worthy of my love.